Good evening. I'd like to welcome you to the Candidate Forum for Illinois Representative in the 43rd District to be elected at the November 8th general election. This forum is hosted by the League of Women Voters of the Elgin area. My name is Carol Grom, and I will be the moderator tonight. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization that works to empower voters and encourage informed participation in our democracy. One of the ways we do that is to hold candidate forums to provide voters an opportunity to hear the candidates running for election. The forums sponsored by the League give candidates for local offices a chance to present information about themselves and their candidacy, their background, skills, education, reasons for running, and what they hope to accomplish if elected. All candidates in 18 contested races were invited to participate in a forum this season. Each was given the opportunity to fill out a candidate questionnaire on our website, and their written responses, if any, can be found in the voter guide. The League follows federal guidelines for candidate forums that prohibit holding a forum when only one candidate is willing to participate. When one candidate is unwilling or unable to attend a forum, the forum must be canceled. To be fair to the candidate who was willing to attend, we offer the opportunity to make a 2-minute candidate statement. Before we begin tonight's scheduled forum, you're going to hear from 2 candidates whose forums had to be canceled because their opponents were not willing to participate. The first is Ted Penesis, a candidate for Kane County Board 16. His opponent, Michael Kenyon, chose not to respond to our invitation. Mr. Penesis, you may make your 2-minute statement now.
Well, thank you so much, Carol, and thank you so much to the Elgin Area League of Women Voters for hosting tonight's candidate forum, and thanks to all of you for coming out tonight. My name is Ted Penesis. My wife, Beth, and I have lived in South Elgin for 20 years. We are proud to call Kane County home. I am honored to become Kane County Board member for District 16, which covers much of South Elgin and a portion of both Elgin and Bartlett. In my professional and volunteer life, I helped solve human and environmental problems for more than 3 decades. I worked full-time for several governmental entities, most recently for the Illinois Department of Natural Resources. Among my accomplishments there was playing a lead role in the national rebranding of the invasive but very healthy fish formerly known as Asian carp. This tasty fish, now called kopi, derived from the word copious, was served at food relief events I organized throughout the state, including several right here in Kane County. I also served on various state and nonprofit boards, including the Illinois Coalition to End Hunger, which strives to eliminate food insecurity, and the Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning's Climate Committee, which works to protect our regional environment and improve our natural resources. I am not a career politician. This is my first run for office. Here are 3 reasons to vote for me. Number 1, I care deeply about the people who live and own businesses in Kane County. This means protecting our environment, safeguarding our residents' physical and mental well-being, and ensuring a strong business climate. Number 2, as I vote on issues before the board, I will be focused on options that improve quality of life. I will be curious. I will be energetic about finding solutions that will work best for all. And number 3, I will be accessible and accountable to you. I will attend forums like this and not hide from voters. If elected, I will devote myself full-time to the work of the Kane County Board. I've literally talked with hundreds of voters throughout this campaign. I've listened to their concerns. As you can imagine, many are deeply concerned, and rightfully so, about their property tax bills increasing every year, especially in this inflationary economy. Should we be so fortunate to win this election, I will act as families do today. Spend money only on things that are absolutely necessary and put off things for another time that we could do without. I got more, but you can go to my website, tedforcountyboard.com. Thank you so much. I appreciate this opportunity, everyone.
You may also, on the League website, see the candidate questionnaires that all of the candidates participating were asked to fill out. It has about their background in education, why they're running, the basics. So I think he covered it pretty well, but you can always check our website for more. So thank you, Mr. Penesis. The next candidate is Vern Tepe, running for Kane County Board, District 22. His opponent, Jeffrey Meyer, chose not to respond to our invitation. Mr. Tepe, you may make your statement now.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Vern Tepe, and I'm running for re-election to the Kane County Board in District 22. First, I would like to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting these forums. It is the only opportunity where you can see and hear all of the local candidates answer the same questions. Unfortunately, my opponent chose not to participate. My guess is that he is afraid to interact with me in public and is instead hiding behind a negative attack website trying to impugn my reputation. But my time is brief, so let me share why you should vote for me. If you want someone who's going to be honest and straight with you, vote for me. If you want to increase resources for mental health, food banks, and homeless shelters, vote for me. If you want to protect women's rights, expand voting opportunities, and expand services for seniors, vote for me. And if you want to be kept informed, join my email list. My work on the county board has afforded me the opportunity to bring the same dedication and enthusiasm for public service that I delivered while I was on the Elgin Township Board, and I would like to continue those efforts. I'm prepared to continue to work positively and in a nonpartisan manner with other individuals, government bodies, and organizations to provide key services in the county. I have the time, energy, and business experience to assist in making that happen. Thanks for listening. I'll be here to answer any questions after the rest of the events here are done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tepe. And now we're going to wait for the candidates for State Representative District 43 to be seated. And before these gentlemen leave, I want to say how much we appreciate their being willing to come out and speak to you when they only had a 2-minute candidate statement to make. And that, again, we're kind of bound by the rules of engagement for forums. But it's always better to hear from the candidates in person. I think you get a better picture of how articulate they are, what they really want, and the fact that they made the effort to come and speak to you, the voters, should count for something. So thanks to these two. Getting back to the main forum, the format tonight is a forum, not a debate. Candidates are expected to accurately represent the facts. The League of Women Voters is not responsible for the accuracy of statements made by the candidates. It is the responsibility of the public, news media, and opposing candidates to fact-check statements made by a candidate. Both candidates have agreed to abide by the ground rules, among them being that no voice, image, or other duplication of the forum may be used by any candidate's representative or campaign in any campaign advertising. This evening, you will have a chance to hear from the candidates for Illinois representative in the 43rd District, Democrat Anna Moeller and Republican Angela Nowak. The format for today's forum will be a 2-minute opening statement followed by 1-minute responses to questions from the moderator and ending with 1-minute closing statements. Our timekeeper will show the candidates when they have 1 minute left, 30 seconds, 15 when their time's up. When we're doing a 1-minute response, maybe we only need 30 seconds, whatever. Anyway, following the opening statements, the audience is invited to submit written questions on the cards provided. Please raise your hand if you wish to receive a blank index card or to have a question collected. The questions will be collected by league members and presented to the moderator. There's Sue over there, and I thought we had somebody else too. Anyway, Sue will collect your questions. The league reserves the right to consolidate questions that are similar in content and to eliminate any questions that are inappropriate. If your question is not addressed or you would like a more detailed answer, Please feel free to contact the candidates later for a response. After the question and answer period, the candidates will have the opportunity to give a 1-minute closing statement beginning in reverse order. We ask that you, the audience members, abide by the following rules. Please silence all cell phones and pagers. Please remain silent and seated during the forum, and please do not respond in any audible way to the candidates. This forum will be recorded and posted to the League of Women Voters of the Elgin Area YouTube channel, where it will be available for viewing via links on our website, lwvelginarea.org, and our Facebook page. It will also be made available to the Illinois Voter Guide. So, after that lengthy introduction, welcome to our candidates, and thank you for agreeing to participate tonight. Ms. Moeller, we will begin with your 2-minute opening statement, please.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, and thank you to the League for hosting this event, and to all of you for attending, and to Ms. Nowak for participating as well. I love this community. It's been an honor to represent the 43rd District since 2014. My #1 priority since serving in the Illinois House has been to represent this beautiful and diverse district, and my loyalty is to you, the people that I serve. Because of your support, I have been a voice for the voiceless, victims of sexual assault, immigrant communities, the elderly, and the developmentally disabled. We have taken on difficult issues and passed reforms that improve our state, including a balanced budget and inflation relief for working families, including cutting the gas tax and the grocery tax this year. We've increased wages for workers and protected their right to negotiate for fair benefits and working conditions. And I'm proud of the work that we've done to increase education and local government funding so that we can lessen our reliance on property taxes and bring back millions of dollars for our community, including a new state-of-the-art manufacturing center at Elgin Community College, improvements in downtown Elgin, and road and clean water projects throughout the 43rd District. This election is crucial to holding on to the cherished freedoms we have taken for granted for the past 50 years. I will always fight for the rights of women, whether it's fighting for equal pay, access to affordable childcare, and paid family leave. And I'm proud to have a 100% pro-choice voting record. And the safety of our communities is under attack by powerful interests. We must hold violent criminals accountable, and I'm proud of my 100% record of support for common sense gun safety laws, including gun dealer licensing to crack down on straw purchasers and a ban on ghost guns. This election is about you and protecting and advancing the values that we share. And I look forward to the discussion this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak, your 2-minute opening statement.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of the Elgin area for hosting this event tonight. My name is Angie Hallock Nowak, and I am the Republican candidate for the Illinois House of Representatives in the 43rd District. I am a 5th-generation Elginite and a graduate of Elgin High School. I earned a bachelor's degree from Illinois State University in health and biology education. I have a master's degree in education with an emphasis in literacy. I am the mother of 3 children. Being as I have no political experience, I am no different than anyone sitting in this room tonight. I have no affiliation with any mega donor, PAC, current or former Illinois legislators. My campaign is completely citizen-funded. When elected to the Illinois House, I intend to represent the people of this district, not special interest groups. I believe in strong families, strong communities, and a strong state. There are many people who believe Illinois is too far gone and are currently packing their bags. But as I sit in front of you here tonight, I have a good feeling of optimism that common sense will win out and the people of Illinois can begin to fix what is broken.
Thank you. Before we begin the questions, maybe if you pull your mic just a hair closer. Okay, thank you both. Now we're going to begin the question and answer portion of the forum with a reminder that each candidate will have 1 minute to answer. If you wish to submit a question, hold it up. A League member will collect it. Okay, the first question will go to Ms. Moeller. How well has Illinois responded to Supreme Court indications that it considers abortion, same-sex marriage, and other social issues to be state, not federal responsibilities? What, if anything, needs to be done in these areas, and what would you do to make your priorities come to pass?
Thank you for that question. Illinois is well-positioned right now in light of the recent Supreme Court decision to overturn Roe v. Wade. Over the past several years, we've passed House Bill 40, which codified which removed the trigger law, which would have made abortion illegal in light of the overturning of Roe. We passed the Reproductive Health Care Act, which codifies a woman's right to reproductive health care and contraception. And we are in a good position, but we need to make sure that we are protecting women who come to our state and doctors who perform reproductive health care in our state. These rights are under attack by our neighboring states, and currently I'm working through a working group to ensure that we can provide access to reproductive health care to anyone who needs it in Illinois.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak, same question.
Abortion is a very sensitive topic. People view it from many different angles. I have my personal beliefs, as does everyone in this room. I would like to get to know how my constituents feel on the topic. With that said, I can tell you that according to a recent poll, about 64% of U.S. voters want abortion providers to be required to notify parents before performing abortions on girls under 18. My opponent sponsored the legislation here in Illinois that ceased parental notification of abortions, and it is obvious here by the numbers that Americans in general don't wish for that.
Thank you. The next question will go first to Ms. Nowak. Illinois has received 4 credit upgrades in less than a year, reflecting progress on stabilizing the state's finances. Do you believe Illinois is on the right path? Why or why not?
It's always tricky when you're accepting federal money, not knowing what to do with that. I would say that as long as we use that money wisely, we can put it to great benefit.
Okay, Ms. Moeller, same question.
Yes, Illinois is on the right track. We have a balanced budget. We've paid down $17 billion in backlog of bills left over from the disastrous Rauner administration. We've put a $1 billion. We've created a $1 billion rainy day fund in the event that we have an economic downturn. And as you mentioned, we have received several credit upgrades from independent financial credit rating agencies that have recognized that Illinois' finances are on the right path. This means that we will save taxpayers millions of dollars in infrastructure improvements, and that we can fund education, social services, and all of the priorities that we have here in our state. We are on the right path. We've made several important revenue diversification changes over the last several years, and we need to continue to be good stewards of taxpayer dollars, but we are on the right path, and we are back on track.
Okay, this next question will go to you first, Ms. Mueller, if I can read it right. How does the state expect counties to respond to the new laws governing cash bond? Kane's state's attorney estimates we'll need at least 27 people for her office alone.
So state's attorneys have varying opinions based on the cash bail portion of the Safety Act that we passed a couple years ago. Just today, State's Attorney Eric Reinhart from Lake County came out defending the no cash bail program and defends it as a public safety measure, an important public safety measure, because people will no longer be able to get out of jail because they can cash bond their way out. They will be assessed based on a safety assessment. I've not seen the analysis that our state's attorney has put together here in Kane County, but other counties are able to meet this requirement, and Lake County is already putting into place practices to make sure that they are ready for January 1st, and I would anticipate that we can do the same here in Kane County.
Did you answer that one?
Oh, ma'am.
Same question.
Okay.
I'm just getting lost in my paperwork, I'm sorry.
That question is a very good example of how things get hidden into bills. And when the proponents of these bills are out speaking, there's never a mention of where the taxpayers are involved in this and the county's responsibility to make the difference in the cash bail that they use for administrative purposes as well is one of those issues that is not on the forefront of our conscience here when we talk about the Safety Act, as it very much should be.
Okay, this next question will go to you first, Ms. Nowak. You are a teacher, are you not?
Yes, ma'am.
What is your opinion of current evidence-based school funding formulas? How would you define adequate state funding for Illinois schools, and what will you do to help facilitate that?
I would love to see some evidence that that current model is successful. As a teacher in my classroom, student success is what I'm basing my success off of. If funding comes in and success is from students is not being reached, what is the disconnect between our funding and our student achievement?
Okay, but the new funding formulas, do you have any opinion on that?
Well, it should result in student success, and if it's not, then it needs to be relooked at.
Okay, Ms. Moeller.
Sure. No child's education should rely on the zip code and where they live. And that was what the evidence-based formula was designed to address. We had historically a very unfair and inequitable funding formula for education in Illinois, where children who lived in the wealthiest district had the highest resourced schools, and those that lived in the poorer areas of the state had lower resource schools. Evidence-based funding has been very successful in driving resources to the schools that need it the most. Children who have special needs, children who are in special education, or who need bilingual services. It's resulted in an additional $14 million a year to U46 alone. And this takes reliance off of our property taxes. Our property taxes are high in Illinois because 60% of education funding comes from local property taxes. So the more that the state can put into funding our schools, the less we have to rely on property taxes. So education-based funding has been very successful.
Thank you. Next one will go to Ms. Moeller first. This is one of our audience questions. Given the large Hispanic population of Elgin, what would you do to help this community thrive?
So I'm proud to represent and live in a district that's diverse and has a large Hispanic population. It's why we moved to Elgin in the first place. Since taking office, my office has been very accessible to the Hispanic community. We're a bilingual office. We make sure that we offer programs and assistance in Spanish and English. And since I've been in office, I've supported several key initiatives to help support our immigrant population, including the Trust Act, so that our immigrant communities are not afraid to interact with law enforcement. They can report crimes and situations and not be worried about facing deportation or immigration enforcement services. We've expanded access to health care for our immigrant communities so that we don't have people going to the emergency room because of preventable diseases. We've expanded access to bilingual education, and I, am happy to continue to do all of those things.
Okay, Ms. Nowak.
As I stated before, I have grown up in this town, and I have lived in this town a quite good majority of my life. And I can tell from experience that Hispanic families are what they hold most dear to them is their faith and their family. They want to have governance over their children's lives, and I will see to it that the parents have that right.
Thank you. This next question will go to you first. Scientists say that climate change is likely to worsen the frequency and severity of floods, fires, droughts, and storms, with severe impacts on economies and ecosystems around the world. We are already dealing with rising insurance and infrastructure costs. What steps can Illinois take now to proactively deal with climate change rather than just fixing the damage after it occurs?
Well, I know I'm not alone when I say that climate change is not necessarily the most important issue facing our country, as only 1% of Americans agreed in a recent New York Times study. In my opinion, there are more urgent problems, such as inflation and gas prices and families that cannot put food on the table. That being said, I am a support of being a steward of this planet that we were blessed with. I support wise decisions for long-term ecological issues. What I do not support, however, is a government who resorts to scare tactics and fear to elicit tax money for green projects.
Ms. Moeller.
Thank you. Well, I mean, as we've seen this week with Hurricane Ian, climate change is affecting the planet in a very scary and dramatic way, and it's going to continue to do that. We need to take immediate steps to address the amount of carbon that's being emitted into our atmosphere. Illinois has taken very positive steps in that direction, and I'm proud to be the chair of the Green Caucus in the House, supporting these efforts. We passed the Climate and Energy and Equitable Jobs Act last year, which takes important steps to closing down coal-fired power plants that are one of the main sources of carbon emissions in Illinois. And we're also bringing in new industries that create new jobs and a new investment in Illinois through solar, wind, energy efficiency, electric vehicle manufacturing. So this doesn't have to be, while we need to address climate change, we're also improving and strengthening our economy by taking these steps.
Thank you. Here's another question from our audience to you first, Ms. Moeller. After the horrors we saw with the Highland Park shooting, what can be done to get these military-style weapons off our streets? Has Illinois done anything besides thoughts and prayers?
Yes, we have done more than thoughts and prayers, and gun violence is a huge problem in our state. No child should be scared to go to school because of a school shooting. My husband's a teacher. He just had a training session last week to deal with an active shooter in his school, and it's a travesty that we have to even think about these things. I'm a co-sponsor of a bill that would ban assault weapons in Illinois. I think it's far past time that we do that. Nobody should have to, there's no need for anyone to own an AR-15 or AK-47. We've successfully passed legislation to ban ghost guns, which are 3D printed guns that can't be traced by law enforcement. And we passed gun dealer licensing last year before, to track down and go after straw purchasers. Part of the problem in our state is that we have guns that are coming in from our neighboring border states, and this needs to be a national priority, but at the state level we have done a lot to address this, and we need to do more.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak.
Can you repeat the question, please?
After the horrors we saw with the Highland Park shooting, what can be done to get these military-style weapons off our streets? Has Illinois done anything besides thoughts and prayers?
I agree the loss of those lives is tragic. However, factually, in the case of the Highland Park shooter, every I was dotted and T crossed, and there was every safeguard against this situation, as far as the Illinois state law, had been taken into account. And as far as I am aware, these military-style weapons are not legal in Illinois, as fully automatic weapons are not. while I do feel that there needs to be some situational advancement, I will support a citizen's right to the Second Amendment.
Thank you. You get the next one. Illinois passed a comprehensive criminal justice reform legislation last year, the SAFETY Act, that changed almost every area of the justice system, from police accountability to pretrial detention to sentencing. It has since been challenged by a number of counties, state's attorneys, and prosecutors who say that it needs to be changed and/or clarified. What changes, if any, would you like to see made to that legislation, and why?
Well, to begin with, the SAFETY Act is very broad and very general. One thing I worry about is the likelihood that honorable men and women will want to serve as police officers in our community when they are facing what they're facing with this bill and its passage, that those certain people committing certain crimes are brought right back out into the streets without cash bail, and the police someone being able to bring accusations up against a police officer and that not coming off of their record. I hope that we can find good men and women that still want to serve and protect our communities once this goes through in its entirety.
Thank you. Ms. Moeller.
Sure. The SAFETY Act was not about disrespecting law enforcement. The SAFETY Act is actually about supporting law enforcement, and but also creating accountability. They're public servants just like anyone else, and they also need to be accountable to taxpayers and the public that they serve. We've made several changes to the SAFETY Act since it was passed in January of 2021. In collaboration and discussion with law enforcement, with police officers and state's attorneys and prosecutors. And we'll continue to make further tweaks as necessary. But the SAFETY Act was an important step in ensuring that our law enforcement officers have body cameras, that they're trained to handle mental health crises that happen in the community, that they themselves are getting mental health services that had been far too neglected in the past. And in terms of the no cash bail, we've referenced it already, that is actually intended to strengthen public safety because nobody can cash bail out if they're a public safety risk. They will have to go through a public safety assessment before they're allowed to leave jail.
Thank you. This next question from one of our audience members goes to you first, Ms. Moeller. Mm-hmm. What is your position, excuse me, on the corporate railroad merger, which is expected to impact Elgin?
I'm opposed to that merger. I actually filed a resolution in the Illinois House in opposition to the merger because of the public safety and environmental risks that the merger presents to Elgin and the communities in the 43rd District. If this merger goes through, there's an estimated 11 additional trains that will be on the rails every day, bisecting our community, which poses a risk to our ambulances and police officers as they try to answer calls. And it also will add rail cars that could be carrying toxic chemicals along the Fox River and increases the possibility of derailment. And as we know, the Fox River is our main source of drinking water, and if something were to occur, if we had a derailment, that would impact hundreds of thousands of people in our area. So for those reasons, I'm opposed and happy to support opposition for this merger.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak.
On that topic, I would like to see more data and the possibility of what that merger might entail before I would vote on or promote legislation for that.
Okay, this next question goes to you first. What changes would make the legislature more effective, and what is your position on term limits for lawmakers and legislative leaders?
I'll start by answering the second part of the question, that yes, I do believe in term limits, and I believe in them set by the people and in a legal stance. But I also believe that the best term limit is our right to vote. And as far as what can be done about the functioning of the state legislature, it has gotten very muddied in the last several years because we've had legislators who have gone above and beyond their scope of employment, and that needs to be reined in and changed.
Thank you. Ms. Moeller.
So I agree with Ms. Nowak. Voting is the best term limit, is a mechanism towards term limits, especially when it comes to rank and file legislators. We have term limits built into our democratic institutions. I have, our position, we have to run every 2 years. State senators often run every 4 years, and it's up to the voters to decide whether or not we deserve to keep our jobs. When it comes to legislative leadership term limits, I was proud to co-sponsor, and we passed a 10-year term limit on the Speaker of the House. I was one of 19 Democrats this past year who decided that it was time for a leadership change in the Speaker position. It was not an easy decision to make, but it was time for new leadership, and we've elected the first Speaker of the House, first new Speaker of the House for the first time in 34 years last year, and it was because of Democrats, including myself, deciding it was time to do that.
Thank you. First one to you, Ms. Moeller. I'm going to combine two questions here that we have about gun violence. One says, what measures would you support to address the growing violence in our communities? Would you favor additional restrictions on the type of weapons available, purchase requirements for guns, and tougher licensing laws, stricter enforcement of current laws? What will make Illinois communities safer? And then we also received one from the audience. Would you support increasing the age of purchase to 21 for all AR-15s currently being sold, and why or why not?
So as I previously mentioned, I am a co-sponsor on a bill that would ban the sale of AR-15s and AK-47s in Illinois in its entirety. So I do support, again, these are military-style weapons that kill people in a very quick fashion, in a very lethal fashion. So I do support banning those access to those weapons in Illinois. In terms of the, and we have instituted gun dealer licensing so that we can hold people who sell these weapons to account, so that they're not selling them to people who are turning around and reselling them on the streets. Clearly more needs to be done, but we have made progress, and I do support further efforts in that regard.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak.
Can you repeat that rather long question, please?
What measures would you support to address the growing violence in our communities? Would you favor additional restrictions on the type of weapons available, purchase requirements for guns, and tougher licensing laws, stricter enforcement of current laws? What will make Illinois communities safer? And then the question from the audience had to do with, would you support increasing the age of purchase to 21 for all AR-15s and that type of weapon currently being sold?
There's several issues in there to address all at one time. As far as the growing violence, the number of violent shootings with guns on the street do not belong to rightful owners of these guns. And so I believe that our focus needs to be taking illegal guns and guns owned by felons off the street first. Increasing the age of purchase to 21, I would not support and agree with, as if you were 18 years old and drafted into our, or willingly going into our military, you're 18 years old and you're given a weapon at that moment in time. I'd also like to say that military weapons are fully automatic weapons, of which are illegal here in the state of Illinois as it stands now, anyway.
Okay, this next question goes to you first. We frequently hear about the need to eliminate wasteful spending from the Illinois budget. Can you identify any specific examples of wasteful spending that you would like to eliminate?
That's me, right?
That's to you.
Okay. Sure. I would start by having certain tax districts, school districts be non-consolidated. I think that would be a really good first step into keeping up with some wasteful spending. In addition to that, any CRT, National Sex Ed standards being put into our schools as well. And then the last one, most recently in the news, is the fraudulent PPP loans that were given out and to ghost employees and employers, and those types of things can be cleaned up.
Thank you. Ms. Moeller.
Sure. With regard to the PPP loans, that was a federal program, so the state didn't have control over those loans. But I do think that, certainly we can, we should always, look for ways to be, more, use our resources more efficiently and more effectively. I recently, as chair of the House Human Services Committee, we did a deep dive into making sure that our nursing homes are held accountable and are providing high quality of care for the most vulnerable in our communities. And the nursing home industry receives hundreds of millions of dollars from the state of Illinois. But we passed landmark legislation this past year to ensure that they're using these funds for staffing and for improving quality, and making sure that there is transparency with the funds that are being, how they're being spent and how they're being administered. So certainly we should always be looking for ways, but this was one example of what we did as a state that I'm very proud of.
Ms. Mueller, this one goes to you first. This is a question from our audience. What infrastructure projects would you support that could improve the quality of life here in Elgin? And I'm going to guess that also means what kind of money would you be able to bring to Elgin? What are the needs here?
Sure. Well, I'm proud to have been able to bring back several $1 million, tens of millions of dollars back to the city of Elgin and our community. One in particular that I'm very excited about is a new state-of-the-art manufacturing training center at Elgin Community College, which is going to help support our local businesses, help train our young people in emerging industries here in the area. And the state is kicking in part of the cost for that project. The community college is going to be financing the rest of it. But that's one example of how we're leveraging state money to help create jobs and improve quality of life in our communities. I've also been able to bring back money for our downtown Elgin to help with downtown Elgin redevelopment efforts, and also with the Longmeadow Parkway Bridge to retire the bonds on that so that we don't have to have a toll bridge on that facility.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak.
I agree actually with several of those things that Ms. Moeller said. In addition to roads and bridges, I would support trade school education, as it is a great option for students exiting high school in this area, and also children and family services in general.
Okay, this next one goes to Ms. Nowak first. Inflation is hitting people hard, raising the cost of groceries, gasoline, energy, and consumer goods. It also raises the cost of government, including road repairs, salaries, and human services. How do you view the use of temporary tax cuts and rebates to help residents deal with inflation? How does that lost revenue affect the ability of state and local governments to fund essential services? Are there better ways to help people deal with inflation?
I think addressing the rate of inflation and national inflation is far outside the scope of this office. The state of Illinois has the second highest property taxes in the country. We are one out of 13 states to impose a grocery tax. I think there are things that we as legislators here in this state can do to ease the pinch of national inflation here at home.
Thank you. Ms. Moeller?
So certainly, Ms. Nowak, I agree with Ms. Nowak. Inflation is a national issue and rates are set by the Fed. But there are things that we can do and we have done at the state level to help ease the immediate impact of the cost of living for families. And that is, eliminating the state sales tax on groceries, freezing the gas tax increase, property tax rebates that everyone is going to be receiving if they own a home, and income tax rebates as well. But long term, we do need to look at the way that we tax, our taxing structure. We have a very regressive tax structure in Illinois where we do rely too heavily on property taxes and sales taxes to fund our services. And that's why I support increasing the tax rate on millionaires and billionaires. People who can afford it need to pay their fair share for public services. And long term, that's something that we need to continue to look at as a state.
Okay, Ms. Mueller, what is your opinion of the use of tax increment financing districts, or TIFs, as a development tool? Do they spur redevelopment of blighted areas, or do they unfairly penalize other taxing districts, including schools, libraries, and parks, in favor of developers? Do they offer a good return on investment? In some cases, there's no way of knowing they aren't actually tracked. Should their use be more strictly tracked and regulated?
So TIF districts are an important tool to local governments and municipalities who want to redevelop areas that have been underinvested in historically. Downtown Elgin is the perfect example of where TIF is used, is a good example of a success story for TIF. 20 years ago, our downtown had very few businesses, a lot of vacancies, and people just didn't want to go to downtown Elgin. But because of the TIF, our downtown is a lot more vibrant and thriving. But I do agree that we need to very closely monitor TIF districts. There are municipalities who use TIFs, to redevelop a green field. That's an inappropriate use of TIF, in my opinion. TIFs really should be only used for the purpose that they've been designed for, and that's to redevelop areas that are blighted or have been neglected in the past.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak?
I agree that TIFs can be used for funding for local government in a positive way. My only concession to that is as long as it leads to a positive impact.
Okay, Ms. Nowak, this one goes to you first. The proposed workers' rights amendment to the Illinois Constitution on the November ballot will guarantee, quote, guarantee the fundamental right to organize, bargain collectively, and negotiate safety conditions, wages, hours, working conditions, and economic welfare, close quote. It also prohibits the passage of any new law by Illinois lawmakers in the future to interfere with, negate, or diminish certain rights. This could prevent passage of any right-to-work law, or it could tie the hands of future lawmakers to clarify or make needed changes. As a current or future lawmaker, what is your opinion of passing an amendment now that cannot be clarified or changed in the future?
I don't support that. If the purpose of Amendment 1 is to protect workers and workers' rights, that is a noble cause, and that should gain bipartisan support. But the language of Amendment 1 is so broad that there is a large uncertainty on what the bargaining demands will be for employers and what the bargaining demands might mean for taxpayers. The issue of it prohibiting change in the future is probably the most concerning point of the entire amendment.
Thank you. Ms. Mueller?
I'm proud to support labor. I'm proud to support workers in our state. Illinois is a great state because we support working men and women and over corporate profits. We saw the disastrous results of the Rauner administration and his number one goal of destroying organized labor in Illinois. He held our budget hostage for 3 years because of his number one goal of destroying organized labor in Illinois. We lost social service agencies. We almost lost public universities because of his single-minded effort to destroy labor unions. This amendment makes that impossible in the future. It enshrines the rights of workers to bargain, to negotiate, to advocate on behalf of their members. That's all it does. And I fully support it.
Thank you. I'm going to remind everybody, if they didn't see when they came in, we have copies on our table of the proposed amendment, including the pros and cons, which are worth reading before you go to vote. Ms. Mueller, the first one here goes to you. The Department of Children and Family Services has a, a long and troubled history with the current director cited for contempt by a judge 9 times this year for failing to place children in appropriate settings. Despite increases in funding, the problems continue. What changes would you support to improve the outcomes for our neediest children?
Yes, the problems at DCFS are troubling, and the state of child welfare in Illinois needs a lot of attention, and it's an area that I've focused on as chair of the Human Services over the last several years. This harkens back again to the Rauner administration and the lack of a budget for 3 years. During that time, we lost hundreds of beds for children in Illinois who needed temporary foster care placements. And because of that loss, we as a state are continuing to struggle, and the pandemic didn't help things either. Things were shut down for a couple of years. That status didn't help our agencies find those locations for our children. So that's part of the reason why we see what's happening. But DCFS had been underfunded for many, many years, starting in the early 2000s, and we are just starting to rebuild that agency. But we need to hold them accountable, and we need to continue to work to make sure that our most vulnerable children are kept safe in our state.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak?
My question to this issue of the DCFS problems is this agency not have enough money to properly function, or do they not properly function despite their allocated budget? I think that question also needs to be answered before moving on. Their main responsibility is our most vulnerable residents, our children, and some of those children are dying on their watch. The Department of Children and Family Services needs a complete overhaul and restructuring, in my opinion. A good start would be to separate their responsibilities of home placement and other accessory responsibilities.
Thank you. And this one will go to Ms. Nowak first. This is one of our audience questions. Elgin State Mental Health Facility is currently under financial and staffing stress. How would you help alleviate their current predicament?
I don't believe that there is a single person in this room or in this community who does not struggle with this issue, whether it is themselves, whether it is a family member, whether it is someone they work with. Mental health is one of the areas where I believe, because of the stress and the strain it puts on families, where government can step in and fund services for people to improve our community.
Ms. Moeller?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, mental health services are incredibly important in our community, and we have moved to a more community-based approach to mental health, and we've increased resources for those services over the past several years. When it comes to the Elgin Mental Health Center, it is primarily a forensic mental health facility at this point, mostly housing those who are unfit to stand trial due to being found criminally insane. And our state, just like every other sector, is struggling to find workers. And that's part of the problem that we're facing. Our normal staffing levels at the facility are around 700, and we're around 500 right now. So they're stretched very thin, and there are a lot of very dedicated public servants working overtime to help the patients that they care for. But we are, the department is aware, and they are taking steps to enlist and recruit new employees at that facility.
Okay, this next one goes to Ms. Moeller first. Would you support ending Illinois' moratorium on new nuclear power plants as part of an overall strategy to fight climate change by reducing fossil fuels and our carbon emissions?
Would I end the moratorium on new nuclear? That was the question?
Yes. Would you support ending that moratorium?
Well, before considering that, I would have to, take a deep dive and understand how that new nuclear could fill the capacity. Right now, we are blessed in Illinois with several nuclear power plants that do provide carbon-free energy, but they're not profitable right now, and because they're very expensive to operate. And the construction of a new nuclear facility would be, in the billions. So we would have to, understand the cost benefit of the construction of a new nuclear facility before considering lifting the moratorium. Right now we're doing what we can just to maintain the fleet that we have, and I don't know if current conditions warrant bringing on new nuclear.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak?
I also agree that there needs to be a serious cost-benefit analysis before making motion on this issue, because nuclear energy can be a form of energy that is generally clean, but we need to definitely have more conversations on that.
Okay, Ms. Nowak, do you favor the use of state funding to lure and subsidize private development projects? When is it a good economic strategy?
My question to the question is why we would use taxpayer money to attract new businesses to a state who are losing businesses. We have businesses who have been here for hundreds of years and companies who've called Illinois home for a very long time, moving out to a better business climate. Fixing that problem is the number one item here. Throwing money, taxpayer money, when we can't keep who we have is not a solution.
Thank you. Ms. Moeller?
Well, I would challenge the notion that we're losing businesses and that Illinois is not an attractive state to do business. Quite the contrary. And I would also challenge the notion that was brought up before that we're losing population. We're actually not. We grew population over the last 10 years. We actually saw an additional 200,000 people move to Illinois over the last 10 years. So Illinois is a great place to do business. Illinois is a great place to live. When it comes to we're not perfect, we can always make improvements, but we're the 5th largest economy in the country, and our GDP just reached over $1 trillion. This is reported a couple days ago. But when it comes to luring new businesses, one needs to understand there has to be a cost benefit. I'm not a huge fan of throwing tax credits and tax subsidies at new companies unless they can prove that there's going to be a net benefit to the state.
Thank you. Ms. Moeller, this one comes from our audience. What are your thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion? Do you implement it in your work? If so, how? If not, why not?
Diversity, equity, and inclusion are incredibly important and what make our communities vibrant and strong. It means that we live in a pluralistic society that welcomes everybody and is open and caring for all kinds of people who live in our community. And that's the kind of community that I want to live in. And I want people to feel valued and respected for who they are. So that's how I interpret diversity, equity, and inclusion. I do strive to practice that as a leader and operationally in my office. We have, as I mentioned before, we've always been a bilingual office. We have incredible people who work in our office who do a great job to provide high quality constituent services. And I pride myself in getting out in the community and walking and knocking on doors and meeting and talking to everybody who lives in our community to understand their perspectives, their needs, and their concerns.
Thank you. Ms. Nowak.
To begin, diversity and inclusion are opposites in definition. As a teacher, I look out into my classroom and I don't see race and I don't see socioeconomic status. I see a student who is there to learn and myself there to teach them. We need to start focusing on what unites us as Illinoisans and Americans.
Okay, I'm going to combine a couple of questions from the audience that both have to do with a woman's right to abortion. What is the candidate's position on whether women should have the legal right to a medical abortion, to bodily autonomy? And in the same vein, I guess, do you feel that parents should be notified if their child is seeking a life-changing abortion? It was written as, could you explain your reasoning for leaving the parents out? So, Ms. Nowak, if you want to try and deal with that.
Well, I've already stated that abortion is a very sensitive topic and people approach that from different angles. I'd be curious to find out how my constituents feel on this topic. As far as letting parents in or out, parents should have the ultimate authority over their children's lives, and I would never legislate them out of that position.
Ms. Moeller.
So I'll address the P&A repeal, the Parental Notification Act repeal, since I think I've explained my position on access to reproductive health care. I did sponsor that bill, and it's to protect the most vulnerable, actually, in our state. 85% of young people do go to their parents when they find themselves pregnant and not knowing what to do. Most young people do go to their parents when that happens in their lives. But there are 15% who've either been raped, victims of incest, victims of abuse by their parents, who can't go to their parents when they find themselves pregnant. And while that law was in effect from 2013 until 2021, those young people had to go to court and ask a judge to give them permission to not be pregnant because they couldn't go to their abusive family for that. And that was re-traumatizing a young person at a very vulnerable time in her life.
Okay. I am told that we have an 80-minute recording limit. Is that correct-ish? Okay, then maybe we better not get to all of these questions. Maybe we better move on at this point. Thank you both for answering our questions. I'm sorry we didn't get to all of them that came in from the audience. There was a couple that looked real interesting. We'll hear your 1-minute closing statements now, beginning with Ms. Nowak.
Thank you again for hosting this event. I am Angie Nowak. I'm a citizen who wants to be proud of my state. I want people of my district to be proud of their state. When elected, I will go to Springfield and ask the questions my constituents want asked and vote on legislation that will benefit their lives. I will not go to Springfield and raise property taxes, dismiss our Constitution, or forget that my job is to represent the citizens of the 43rd District. I will go to Springfield and repeal the Safety Act, restore parental notification, bring ethics to the forefront, support a balanced budget, and restore pride to the state of Illinois.
Ms. Moeller.
Thank you, and thank you again for being part of this forum. Because of you and the voters in the 43rd District, I've been an effective and independent voice in the legislature and a force for positive change in the General Assembly. Being one of 19 who helped elect a new speaker last year and passing legislative leadership term limits, we've taken on entrenched interests, including the powerful nursing home industry, to improve the quality of life for the most vulnerable. I'm running again to be an effective voice of reason, balance, and strength in defending the values that we cherish in our state and to ensure that everyone has a voice in state government. I'm running for re-election so I can continue to be the voice of the 43rd District and hold violent gun offenders accountable, ensure our neighborhood schools have the resources to thrive, protecting our environment, supporting our small businesses, and protecting access to reproductive health care. As we prepare for the election, I'm so thankful for the strong support I've received from the community, and I ask for your vote this November 8th. Thank you.
Thank you both for participating in this candidate forum and giving the voters a chance to hear your views. For more information on these and other candidates, check our voter guide on our website, lwvelginarea.org, and the League of Women Voters Illinois Voter Guide. That concludes tonight's candidate forum. I want to thank the candidates, the league members, and those of you in the audience who took the time out of your day to come and hear the candidates. I will say we have another forum scheduled for Thursday, the 6th. It will be Kane County Board District 17. It will also be here in the library at 7. The forums which had been scheduled for next week have been canceled due to the withdrawal of 2 candidates who had agreed earlier to participate. Those would be October 11th, Illinois Representative District 66, and October 13th, Kane County Sheriff at the Rake House Center. In addition to the forums hosted by the Elgin Area League, we will shortly have on our website forums that were recorded by other leagues. The Illinois Appellate Court 2nd District, recorded by Central Kane County League, the Kane County Treasurer, also by Central Kane, and congressional representative for the 8th District to be recorded on October 20th by the Palatine League. We regret to inform you that no forums will be held for the following races due to insufficient candidate participation: the Illinois Supreme Court 2nd District, the 11th Congressional District, Illinois Senate District 25, Illinois Representative District 65 and 66, Kane County Clerk, and Kane County Board Districts 16, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, and 24. This has been very disappointing for us to have so many candidates decline our invitation, and I think it does a real disservice to the voters. I hope you will keep in mind which candidates did agree to participate, and that will be on our website also. That concludes tonight's forum. Thank you and good night.